This might be one of the most important works in science fiction history, and most people haven't even heard about it. Now, instead of focusing on cybernetic robots or dystopian police states or intergalactic wars, the Space Trilogy deals with faith and temptation and redemption and the spiritual order of the cosmos. It's a book about theology, so I'm gonna talk about it. But Ransom, as time wore on, became aware of another, more spiritual cause for his progressive lightening, a nightmare. He had read of space. At the back of his thinking for years had lurked the dismal fantasy of the black, cold vacuity, the utter deadness, which was supposed to separate the worlds. He had thought it barren, and now he saw that it was the womb of the worlds, whose blazing and innumerable offspring looked down nightly even upon the earth with so many eyes, and here with how many more. Space was the wrong name. The Space Trilogy is a very big moment in science fiction history. The trilogy is rooted not in a single artistic impulse or just an attempt to explore some interesting idea. Instead, C.S. Lewis's The Space Trilogy came out of a deliberate intellectual and spiritual project. The trilogy, comprised of Out of the Silent Planet, Perelandra, and That Hideous Strength, emerged from a small literary group at Oxford known as the Inklings that included Lewis as well as his close friend J.R.R. Tolkien. Both of these writers, frustrated at the contemporary state of science fiction, set out to create a new mythology for our disenchanted age. They thought that science fiction suffered from a kind of rampant dehumanization and a very large philosophical void. In one sense, it was clearly promoting a kind of sterile atheism, and in another sense, a hollow materialistic worldview. Science fiction has a real potential for the imagination, but it needs to be brought back in line with the classic tales of humanity. And thus the Space Trilogy was born. At its core, the Space Trilogy is a very long and very complex critique of what Lewis termed scientism. Lewis was not concerned with genuine scientific inquiry or scientific work. Scientism is a sneaky worldview that tries to reduce all of human experience, including morality, consciousness, art, and love, to purely material and mechanistic explanations. So people might say we only fall in love because of chemicals. You don't want to be the we're all just chemicals guy. It's an embarrassing place to be. So instead of scientism, we're going to do a defense of a transcendent moral order. Space books about good and evil. All the philosophical and theological arguments of the Space Trilogy, they form the bedrock of the narrative. They're providing a framework for every plot point and character arc. The books are a move in the battle for the soul of humanity. The first book in the series, Out of the Silent Planet, it flows like a typical classic space adventure. Our main character, Ransom, his name is Ransom. He's tricked into heading to Malacandra. It's Mars. He's tricked by the villain Weston. And Weston, in traditional fashion, he views the new planet as something to be conquered, something to be controlled, and something to be made subservient to his will. To you, I might seem a vulgar robber, but I bear on my shoulders the destiny of the human race. This is a direct echo of the scientific sentiment of the time. The idea of man becoming their own kind of god. The world they find on Malacandra is not chaotic or disorganized, unsophisticated. Instead, the world of Malacandra is what you might call an unfallen world. A world that operates harmoniously under the guidance of a powerful Oyarsa. You could think of an Oyarsa as a guardian angel. Now, I can tell you how the so-called primitive Martians, they actually live with more spirituality or morality than the so-called advanced humans, and that would come across as trite or cliche. We've all seen that movie before. It's Dances with Wolves, it's Avatar, it's nothing new here. But you should remember that this story was written in the 1930s, a time when the fervor of imperialism and eugenics and man's true greatness was very much in fashion. There's very little heroism in the first novel, and the only heroism you get is a willingness to see and learn from and defend an alien culture. The second book, Perelandra, it shifts the narrative from exploration and cultural critique to an intense psychological and theological drama. For the first book, you might have been able to overlay some kind of Christian structure to the story, and it kind of fits into place, but not overtly, not obviously. Now with the second book, Perelandra, it is a story of the Garden of Eden. That is what it is. It's not hiding it at all. It's completely obvious and direct. It's in your face. Our hero Ransom, again his name is Ransom, he arrives on Perelandra, and Perelandra is Venus. It's a paradise of life and beauty. The descriptions don't feel like an alien world from a sci-fi movie. It's a lush, soft land of floating islands, full of exotic creatures, dragons and all. But they just seem to fit right in on this dream-like world. And we only find one perfectly innocent being on the planet. That's Eve. But now Eve has green skin, and she's called the Green Lady. Eve is the Green Lady. The Green Lady's Eve. Now obviously, if you have the Garden of Eden story, eventually the snake needs to arrive. So again with this story, Weston is back. But instead of being the standard self-interested, misguided villain with delusions of grandeur, now Weston is literally possessed by the Bent One. He's possessed by Satan. Weston is now a terrifying, soulless entity referred to as the Unman. He's not a man anymore, he's a vehicle for evil. And tragically enough, the human Weston, the Weston with a soul, is briefly aware of his possession. He's able to break through the spell for just an instant before becoming completely subsumed by it. My God, Ransom, it's awful. You don't understand. Right down under layers and layers, buried alive. You try to connect to things and can't. They take your head off. And you can't even look back on what life was like in the rind, because you know it never did mean anything, even from the beginning. The waters closed over his head, and still his enemy pulled him down into the warm depth, and down farther yet, to where it was no longer warm. The core of the book is a series of philosophical and theological arguments between Ransom and the Unman. The Unman is attempting to seduce the Green Lady. The Unman's arguments are insidious, some kind of modern subjectivism or moral relativism. You know, how do you know that something is bad is actually bad? Perverse forms of evolutionary thought. He tries to convince the Green Lady to defy Maleldil. Maleldil is the one god, and defy his seemingly arbitrary laws. Laws that are difficult to understand the reason for. This is a difficult concept, but good and evil do not come from a place of rationality. They don't come from arguments. Truth and morality come from a place beyond human reason. They come from a place that we do not have access to. You can't logic your way to good. And the same thing goes for evil. You can't use reason alone to call something evil. Ransom, in this story, he can't explain through logic why the snake is evil, why the Green Lady should not listen to him. He cannot win an argument against the devil. Maybe because he has to appeal to some divine or transcendent law, but also maybe because the devil has been arguing like this for a very long time and has a lot more practice. The heroism in this novel is somehow finding a way to stop the snake, stopping the snake from tainting paradise, from corrupting the simply curious, pure nature of Eve. This is why many people consider book number 2 to be their favorite. Ransom is failing to get the Green Lady to understand that Weston is evil. He's dangerous. Weston is trying to corrupt her and this Garden of Eden. But being a truly innocent part of the garden, the Green Lady, she doesn't really understand the concept of evil or violence or anything like that. And with the snake Weston doing a very good job at slowly brainwashing her, Ransom is out of options. He might be fairly smart and well-intentioned, but he can't keep going on like this. So what does he decide to do? What does he miraculously understand that he needs to do? The idea comes to him from another place, from the wind, from the Holy Spirit. The idea that he just needs to smash Weston's head in with a rock. You see, there is such a thing as justified hatred. There's such a thing as moral violence. There are things in this world that need to be removed from this world. So Ransom puts his own life at risk, and he goes to war with Weston. You should note that C.S. Lewis was writing this story around the outbreak of World War II. Violence is an option to keep the world from falling apart. And people love this book. They love Perelandra, the second book. It's such a simple setup. Garden of Eden, snake shows up, and what do? You destroy the snake. Now you might die too, but at least you saved the world. The third book, that Hideous Strength, is usually where C.S. Lewis either loses you or wraps up the whole story in a monumental achievement. It's not for the faint of heart. It's clear that Lewis had a lot of ideas left over for the trilogy, and he just shoved all of them in here. Much, much longer, many more characters, and we're not even in space anymore. We're back on Earth in a kind of dystopian, technocratic, Arthurian legend. Imagine 1984 with magic and a big bear. There's a bear in the story, and I'm not smart enough to understand what's going on with the bear. But the bear kind of saves the day. The big conflict in the book is the nefarious National Institute for Coordinated Experiments, the NICE. It's nice. A cultish organization that seeks world domination through a fusion of science and dark powers. Many of the people in the NICE aren't even aware of the broader picture. They're just cogs in a machine, golems for someone else's purpose. It's humanity's attempt to control everything, a new Tower of Babel. The ultimate source of the conspiracy is not just man's hubris and overconfidence, but again, it's the supernatural influence of the Bent One and demonic forces. These people are actually possessed by ideas. They're possessed by entities that they don't understand. He did this and that, and he said thus and thus, and did not know why. His mind was a mere spectator. Still not asking what he would do or why, Frost went to the garage. He came up with as many petrol tins as he could carry. He piled all the inflammables he could think of together in the objective room, and then he locked the outer door to the anteroom. That tiresome illusion, his consciousness, was screaming in protest. His body had no power to attend to those screams. Like the clockwork figure he had chosen to be, his stiff body, now terribly cold, walked back into the objective room, poured out the petrol, and threw a lighted match into the pile. The final book is a weird mishmash of elements. They even resurrect the wizard Merlin to help set things straight again. I'm not going to go through the plot entirely and regurgitate everything from Wikipedia just to make easy content. You should be reading these books. You should be going through this one with at least half the respect you give something like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's spiritual work. It's a Christian, historical, theological mess that might be good to have bouncing around your head. So I'm just going to go through ideas that came to me as I was working my way through the 3 books. Institutions don't exist. It's a marketing campaign. It's a shared illusion. It's the magic of language. Institutions are an idea that people have and that people create. So an institution is not going to control you. The people behind the institution are. The words that they make, the images that they create. You're controlled and moved by images and ideas, things that don't really exist. It's a kind of magic. The people make an institution. They made it. They direct its movement. And that kind of illusion can change if people change. I'm not trying to be a downer. You should just understand that people can change institutions. Imagine something as big as the law, how much power it has. And you probably have thought or realized that a law has no power if everyone ignores it, or if the people behind the institution don't enforce that law. It's an illusion. You might be thinking that you're subservient to an institution, to a corporation, but these are subservient to people. They're an illusion. They are marketing. Motives are not the cause of action, but its byproducts. When you have attained real objectivity, you will recognize all motives as subjective epiphenomena. You will then have no motives, and you will find that you do not need them. Motives are a drive to do what you think you should do. Motives are what would be good to do. And good is a question of morality. In the trilogy, it's rightly pointed out that science needs no morality. There's no morality in science. And you might say that science should do things to make life better, but what is good? Who decides what is good? Is it subjective? Science has no good and no should. It has no ought. This is not my original idea. This is the big problem. Is every direction you go, is every choice you can make the same? Is every choice morally the same? So maybe there's a kind of morality a kind of law that's above mankind. There's a concept in Buddhism that it does not like to be talked about, and it is the big it. God, the unending universe, the nature of reality, whatever you call it. Just try to condense it down in a paragraph or two, and you'll probably find out how awkward or difficult it is. Try explaining God to someone else. It's very, very hard. But this is like exercise. It's spiritual exercise. It's very, very difficult for people that are so limited and stupid to try and talk about something that's infinite. You're trying to take everything and fit it into a small box. It's embarrassingly difficult. So instead, we like to talk about religion, something that someone else wrote, arguing about details. And that might be easier, but it might be a waste of time. So instead of talking about religion, try and talk about God instead. I just find it interesting that C.S. Lewis, a well-connected professor at Oxford, writing about a totalitarian technocratic organization allying themselves with demonic forces for world domination. The character in his book is a college professor that finds out that his own organization is possessed by Satan and using education, social conditioning, the military, policing, governments, all to subtly take over the world and subdue the rest of mankind. There has to be some sort of a wink and a nod there. So in the first two books, Ransom, just one guy, saves the day. It's a personal journey that you can follow, but in the third book, that Hideous Strength, there's a very small group that brings down the NICE, a group of academics, a maid, a student, a wizard, and a bear. It's a real counterculture. It's a small group of random people. It's not some giant movement of symbols and images and slogans. It's people like you, and I thought that was weirdly inspiring. So the Space Trilogy is a very relevant body of work, something that might be needed. The scientific details are outdated. The predictions about space travel did not pan out, but the strength of the Space Trilogy is its sense of wonder. Lewis was trying to create magic in today's world, and there needs to be a sense of wonder, of mystery, or even divine purpose in the world. The world around you is not just molecules bumping into each other. It's a theater for beauty and for divine glory. Spiritual forces are real and very much active. The Space Trilogy is a work that challenges the foundations of modernity. You get breathtaking images of an enchanted cosmos, and you also get the importance of a moral, spiritual, and imaginative life in a world that's become what you might call sterile. It's a magical tale, so go and read something like that.